And here we go. It's Drop the Mic on a Friday. Mike Eccleston here live once again on the Legends Podcast Network on Lenny Melnick, FantasySports.com, a network that's growing more and more each day, and I'm lucky enough to be part of. Thank you to all who are listening and all those in the chat room. Come on in, take your shoes off, grab a drink, relax. I got a show for you today. I have a lot on my plate today, so let's have at it. Yet another record set by Mr. Albert Pujols of the Los Angeles Angels. He's recorded his 2000th career RBI with his home run yesterday in Detroit, becoming just the fourth player to do so. Hank Aaron, Babe Ruth, and Alex Rodriguez are the only others in that class. Now, when you take a step back and look at Pujols' career, or at least so far, it's remarkable for a multitude of different reasons. First of all, his 11-year career in St. Louis with the Cardinals was great enough for the Hall of Fame, period. Like, he was the gold standard. No ifs, ands, or buts are needed there. He was a rare power hitter who could hit for an average of 350 as well. It was like an average season for him was like 330 with like 40 to 43 home runs. That was a given. On a given season. Like that's what you expected from him. That's remarkable. It was machine-like. That kind of consistency in production is unheard of, especially when you think about today's game. Because you see a lot of guys who are really up and down. You know, it's outside of Mike Trout, I feel like everyone is a little bit up and down. They have like great years. They have years that they're good but not great. You know, they're up and down. I look at, obviously, a guy like Bryce Harper, which I'm going to get to in a bit. But you just don't see that kind of consistency anymore. In 11 years as a Cardinal, he only struck out 70 or more times twice. The only time he hit below 300 was his last season as a Cardinal in 2011. He hit 299. We aren't talking about him as much today because of the fact that he dropped off so dramatically once he arrived in LA. Once he signed that contract, something happened. He has not been the same player, clearly. But yeah, probably the best first 10 seasons in the history of baseball. It's up there. But to think that even with his production plummeting like it did, he still has a career average of over 300 and reached 2,000 RBIs. That in itself is incredible. What a feat. What a career Albert Pujols has had. Really one of my favorite players growing up. It was like you almost couldn't get him out as a Cardinal. You couldn't pitch him anywhere. Up in the zone, down in the zone, late in the game, it didn't matter. He was the kind of guy who's going to take you out no matter where you pitch him. There was no strike zone for him. Oh, but don't let that distract you from the fact that Bryce Harper has been a colossal disappointment in Philadelphia thus far. I know it's still early, but this is what I've tried to say. He's not. I hate to say it, but I will, and I will continue to say it until the cows come home or he proves me wrong on a consistent basis. Bryce Harper is insanely overrated. His talent is through the roof. We all know that. His power is unreal. He won the MVP in 2015. He had an incredible season. He proved that he could do that. Highly touted. He's one of the most highly touted players in baseball history. For those kind of expectations, and then adding a $330 million deal in free agency when I don't believe that he deserved that kind of money, for him to come to Philadelphia in the hitter's haven that is Citizens Bank Park, especially for left-handed power hitters. I mean, this is the guy you're going to get. I'm sure he'll go off for, a month or so. He'll have, June and July or something. He'll wind up going off this year or something. Last year it was April. Last year it was April and some of May. And then you couldn't, you couldn't find them from, June to July. And then he picked it up kind of again in August and September. But it's incredible how boom or bust this guy is. When he's hitting, there's nobody in the sport that's that much better. And I mean, obviously Mike Trout is, but I mean, Mike Trout is the gold standard. But Bryce Harper is one of the, most feared hitters in all of baseball when he's hitting. Harper has had months where he looked like the league MVP. Then there will be a search party out looking for him a month and a half later. The thing that bothers me about Bryce Harper is he'll go 3 for 38 and then hit a moonshot on Sunday Night Baseball that everyone drools over. So, everybody will start talking about how great he is and that kind of power and, that's why he's one of the best players in baseball. I'm like, cool it. Let's see him go through seasons in which he plays like that kind of guy. Full seasons. Obviously, I get that everybody goes into a slump. 2-3 weeks, guys go through slumps. The thing is it's all or nothing with Bryce Harper. He's going to have a great month or he's going to have a terrible month. There is no in between. Just a little bit of consistency. Just a little bit. I thought that maybe with the change of scenery, Citizens Bank Park being a hitter's paradise, he got his money, he's with the contender again, that this would be what turns it around. But it's Friday, May 10th, and we're still singing the same tune. 231 average with 7 home runs and 47 strikeouts. $330 million man for the next 13 years. That's what you're getting. The Phillies right now are 21-15 on top of the NL East, which is pretty much what most people expected after the offseason that they had, obviously. Getting JT Realmuto, Bryce Harper, trading for Gene Segura. Obviously already having Rhys Hoskins. It's amazing. And I can't forget about Andrew McCutchen either. They made a lot of moves. And they had already proven to be a team that was on the up and up. They just weren't there yet. It's amazing how much the Phillies could potentially win if Harper was a little more consistent. Big stars making that kind of money need to be held accountable. They need to be helping carry your team to wins. It's not supposed to be Harper continues to struggle, Phillies win anyway. That's not how this is supposed to work. He's supposed to be the reason that they're unstoppable. That's supposed to be Bryce Harper. This is supposed to be his team. This is supposed to be his franchise now. And until he proves that, I'm going to continue to harp on this. That's not how this works after you're given $330 million to be the franchise player in the city of brotherly love. For a team that looks like they can win a World Series. This team has a lot of potential. A lot of potential. I know the starting pitching might not be great right now. And I know the bullpen is a little bit of a mess when you're thinking about David Robertson and what's gone on over there. But I'm just talking potential. That's a tough lineup. When Bryce Harper is right, Hoskins, Harper, Segura, McCutchen, Realmuto. Then you got Michael Franco in there. Those are great hitters. Speaking of disappointing, remember when Japanese star pitcher Yuge Darvish was good? Remember when he signed with the Cubs for 6 years, $126 million? Remember when he had the best strikeout through 9 innings ratio of all time from 2012 to 2016? Remember when the biggest concern about Darvish was how he fared in the postseason with the Los Angeles Dodgers in 2017? No? Yeah. Me neither. Dear Lord, what a flop Yuge Darvish has been as a member of the Chicago Cubs. I get that he was hurt and that he missed most of last season. But it was stated that he was back to full strength to start the season. Ready to go. Now, I figured he may struggle to start off because, you have to shake off the cobwebs. Obviously, you're not really sure how he's going to be exactly right away, and maybe he was going to have to build his way up. But he's done. It looks like he's completely shot right now. Completely lost the strike zone. Once again, yesterday afternoon, against a completely overmatched Miami Marlins lineup, Darvish only gave up 1 hit and 1 run. That's pretty good, right? I was looking at that, I'm like, okay, so he should be able to go, 6 or 7 innings like that. One problem. 6 walks. 6 walks. Could only go 4 innings because of those walks. Cost him a win. Cost him a chance for a W. Drove his pitch count up to 96 on the day. His ERA is now up to 5.4. And his whip, 1.72. 33 walks in 36 2/3 innings. Nearly a walk per inning. These numbers are alarming. Anyone who's listened to my show knows I harp on the importance of strike throwing. I would rather you just get hit hard. I would rather you give up a bomb than a walk. Why? Because at least you're in the strike zone. You challenged him. You hit you hit your spot. He just beat you. Tip your cap and move on. That's something that you can live with. That's something that you can deal with. If you hit your spot in the strike zone and someone takes you deep, all right. If you're missing your spots, you're all over the place. Putting guys on base, wildness, it bores your fielders to sleep, and it puts you and your team into bad situations. You load the bases, you put two guys on, you get behind 2-0, 2-1, 3-1 into counts, and then you have to try to groove one in there to try to throw a strike. It becomes dangerous. Walking a tightrope, and that's constantly when you're walking guys like this. I don't care if you're striking out 7 guys. If you're walking 6, you're more in danger of A, short outings, and B, when you do get hit, you're going to get hit hard. Walking too many hitters leads to a lot of different problems, mentally and physically. And it's tough for the Cubs to take him out of the rotation because you're locked into that massive contract for years to come. Luckily for Chicago, like JJ just pointed out, because they have been red hot since that bad start to the season. They've been the hottest team in baseball. Luckily for Chicago, they're winning games so they can mask the Yuge Darvish problem for now. He's not being exposed as much. But for fantasy purposes, move on. It's over. It was an experiment and it didn't work. Cut ties. Now I'm going to do something that I don't often do on this show. And that's bring up a kid who is absolutely mashing in the minor leagues and may make it too difficult not to call him up to the big leagues at some point this season. That's outfielder Yordan Alvarez of the Houston Astros. Yeah, I know, because, that's exactly what Houston needs. More big, young bats, right? It's not enough that they have Bregman, Altuve, Springer, Correa, Michael Brantley. It's not enough that they have, the best team in baseball. Yeah, let's add, one of the best prospects, hitting prospects, outfielder prospects in all of baseball. In 30 games this year, 110 at-bats, this kid is hitting .391 with 14 home runs and 40 runs batted in. His slugging percentage is .873. That's an excellent OPS. That's just crazy. The 21-year-old started off this season number 40 on the list of, MLB prospects. But, of course, with guys who have gotten called up and with his play on the field, I'm sure he's skyrocketed up that list by now. One thing that I love This really stood out to me on the scouting report on him, on Alvarez, is that he understands that he doesn't have to swing for the fences in order to hit home runs. That's a big deal to me. A lot of big boppers, big guys go up there pressing, swinging like they're thinking home run as soon as they get into the box. To me, that throws hitters off when they don't necessarily need to. And they strike out a ton when they need to just focus on making good contact. If you have that power, making good contact, home runs will come. Another thing I love about this is the situation he will be in when they do eventually make this move. A lot of younger, rebuilding, or just, poorly constructed teams expect and need a young star prospect to come up and be their savior. The Astros are the best team in the sport, with a very good young nucleus of position players. This will allow Alvarez to be able to just come up and be him. Just fit in. Be another piece to the puzzle. No added pressure. And that should help with the developmental process. He won't necessarily have to come up and play the hero. It's funny that the kid we've heard about for a year or so has been Kyle Tucker. Then this kid Alvarez just comes flying in and just takes up the spotlight. And he's going to take the spotlight away from Kyle Tucker. There's so much talent in this Astros system, which makes life that much more difficult for contenders in the American League. I mean, just add more talent to a team that is absolutely stacked. Unfortunately, for baseball fans who are looking forward to seeing a guy like this, a big guy who can hit like he can, he likely won't be called up anytime soon. He's not on the 40-man roster. And plus, he's still learning to be an outfielder. And I'm trying to think of who would go, probably like Tony Kemp or, Tyler White or one of those guys. But they would be, designated for assignment because they're out of options. But man, when he gets called up eventually, thinking of that outfield with George Springer, Michael Brantley, and Yordan Alvarez, even if he obviously in the American League they have the DH, so you can always DH him. That lineup is going to be loaded for a long time. Unfortunately for, those in the American League that are competing. The funny thing about baseball is that when a kid has a great year, you have no idea what they're going to do the following year. I almost feel like I've been there with Brandon Nimmo, where Nimmo had a good year. Like, he didn't have a great one, but he had a good year. He was better than I thought he was going to be. And I'm curious as to what he does his second year. Because you want to see more of a sample size as to, get a gauge of where a player is, whether they're a pitcher or a hitter. You can have a good year and then the next year fall off the face of the earth. Obviously, Nimmo has been a strikeout machine this year and is hitting 200 and is just coming off, the biggest offer in, Mets history. But I'm not even going to be talking about Nimmo here. It's very possible for a pitcher to be top 5 in the Cy Young voting one year and then to pitch to a 6 ERA by the middle of May the next year. This is the case for Kyle Freeland of the Colorado Rockies. He finished 4th, and he pretty much came out of nowhere to do this, by the way. He finished 4th in the NL Cy Young voting last season. 17-7 record, 2.85 ERA. But what went wrong? Well, he's given up 9 home runs in his first 8 starts of the season. Look, I know you don't necessarily have to be a power pitcher in order to, coming in throwing 98 miles per hour on the gun or higher in order to succeed. But when you aren't a power pitcher in today's league, and you're not getting a lot of strikeouts, your command needs to be nearly flawless. 90 to 91 mile per hour fastball is fine. But you got to hit your spots. Can't fall behind. Can't miss up in the zone. Professional hitters are going to eat you alive. A guy like Freeland needs to keep the ball down, induce more ground balls. Smart pitchers can figure it out, and I'm sure Freeland will. But for fantasy purposes, I would not touch him until it's proven that he figured it out on a consistent basis. I want to see a few great starts from Freeland before I would consider picking him up. Because he's not one of those guys who can mask his rough outings with strikeouts. Because there are some guys that, they have a high ERA. They're not necessarily pitching all that well, but they can strike out 7 or 8. And they can still give you enough fantasy points to help you. Kyle Freeland is not one of those guys. He has to be pitching well in order to have fantasy relevance. Baseball is a game of inconsistencies. It's a mind game just as much, if not more, than it is a physical one. The Rockies, as a pitching staff, have given up the most home runs in the majors, and none of them should be excused. But Freeland's numbers ballooned from 2018 to 2019. I understand where they play. They play at Coors Field, which is a tough field to pitch on, and they're going to give up a lot of home runs. But there were a lot of people who had some high expectations for this Rockies rotation as to their rotations from years past because of guys like German Marquez, guys like, Kyle Freeland and John Gray. Let's see it. Because they're starting to climb, out of, the doldrums where they were at the beginning of the season. Now just a few games under 500. But people were expecting them to be able to compete with the Dodgers in the division at the beginning of the year. A guy like Kyle Freeland has to be better. He has to be better in order for them to have a chance there. So I turned on the Yankees-Mariners game last night. Saw Brett Gardner was hitting 3rd in the lineup. Proceeded to turn the game off. Under no circumstances should Brett Gardner, even at the peak of his prime, to me, be hitting 3rd in the Yankee lineup. This is coming from someone who at one point thought he was the best position player on their roster. At his best, he should be a leadoff hitter. At his worst, towards the bottom of the order. Third should never happen. Shouldn't even be a thought. Especially at this point in his career. Yes, he has 6 home runs on the season. But when you think of Brett Gardner, you're not thinking of a home run hitter. He never has been and he never will be a home run hitter. He can hit home runs, but obviously his strength has always been his legs. When I think of a 2, 3, 4 hitter, I'm thinking of guys who are run producers. Guys who can leave the ballpark at any moment. Or just really good hitters. I don't consider Brett Gardner to be any of those. Gleyber Torres, Clint Frazier, Miguel Andujar, all should be hitting either before or after Gardner. But anyway, the Yankees pitching a 2-hit, like they pitched a 2-hit I was going to say they pitched a shutout, but with 2 outs in the 9th inning, the Mariners, obviously Domingo Santana took our oldest Chapman deep. But regardless, they pitched a gem last night at Yankee Stadium against the Mariners team that's been reeling lately, and I feel like has started to come back down to earth after having a great start to this season. J. Happ needed that start. He needed that kind of outing. He had been struggling this season. He needed to be the kind of guy that was stable. Like, steady, like this is what you're going to get from J. Happ. Especially with all the injuries. Because everyone is kind of up and down. You weren't quite sure exactly what you were going to get from everyone. J. Happ was supposed to be that guy who was like the Rock. You knew he was there. You knew what he was going to get. He's a solid guy. Adam Ottavino, Tommy Canley, Zach Britton, all pitched perfect innings. That was big for all of those guys because, Tommy Canley, obviously what happened last year. And Zach Britton, from time to time, struggles to, he can be very hittable at times. So it was an impressive showing by the Yankees as a collection last night at the stadium. Oh, and by the way, Gio Urshela has been a godsend for this Yankee team. And I know Andujar's back, but to me, he came out of nowhere. I had never heard of Gio Urshela. He came up and he's hit .354 since getting the call. And he's very good with the glove over at third base. Both Urshela and Clint Frazier, who most of you already knew, have proven to at least that they should get an extended look on a major league roster. Frazier, it's just unfortunate at this point. He went from being one of the top prospects, and everybody knew how big he was and how much power he has. And every time he gets called up to the big leagues, he hits the cover off the ball, and then he just gets sent back down a week or two later. Because it's clear that he is a major league player. For the longest time, people have wondered, what more does this kid have? What more does this kid have to do to get regular playing time in the Bronx? When will the Yankees realize that Frazier needs to be in the lineup instead of Brett Gardner every day, to me? Because at this point, I think Brett Gardner is just about done. When will the Yankees realize that Gardner is done and Frazier needs to play every day? Imagine the pop in the Yankee lineup. Healthy, with Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, Aaron Hicks, and Clint Frazier in that. I certainly would not want to pitch against that lineup. Frazier will finally get that opportunity since there is no timetable for Judge or Stanton's return. We'll see what happens when those two are ready to go. Hicks is expected to be activated on Monday, by the way. Staying with the Yankees a little bit. Big game at the Trop tonight in Tampa, Florida. Domingo Herman, who's gotten off to a fantastic start for the Yankees with a 6-1 record, a 2.35 earned run average, and a strikeout per inning, going head-to-head with Tyler Glasnow, who's been even better. 6-0 with a minuscule 1.47 ERA. All right. This needs to stop, by the way. People like to roll their eyes when the Rays are brought up as if to say, oh, that's cute. Because of their, the market, because of their fan base or their lack thereof, because I know that, they'll get 500 people coming to the game. It's bad. I get it. It's bad. But the fan base doesn't, that's not the product on the field. But what they put together with the lack of money is more impressive than anything else. Now, Rays outfielder Austin Meadows has been activated from the injured list. That's big for this lineup because you can argue that he looked like their best hitter before the injury. He was kind of coming into his own. People started to forget about Austin Meadows. Austin Meadows was a good prospect. And it looked like he was coming into his own and everything. Now he gets to come back. I'm not sure if they're going to slot him where he was at the top, number one in the order, because Brandon Lowe has been playing really well leading off. Either way, it's a good problem to have. Meadows became a big part of this team at the top of the order. 351 average, 6 home runs, 19 runs batted in his first 74 at-bats this season. Tommy Pham has been his usual great self. Yandy Diaz has been phenomenal. The Rays are going to feel some pressure as the Yankees get healthier and as Boston climbs back up, like JJ just brought up, with, the Red Sox, nearing 500, them playing very good ball ever since Michael Chavis was called up. They're actually thinking about, they're trying to get Michael Chavis to be an outfielder too for when Pedroia comes back. But the Rays can compete. This is a big series early on in the season. I'd like to see the Rays make a stand here, because this is a big season for the Rays. They can prove a lot this year if they can actually, take hold of the division and actually make some noise in the postseason, because that's the only way they're going to get respect. On to the NBA for a bit. There is no reason that the Houston Rockets, sorry, I was in baseball mode, should lose this series to Golden State, since Kevin Durant is going to be out for the rest of the series. These Warriors are not the same as they were years ago before KD. They don't have the same depth they had. Obviously, they had Harrison Barnes. Andrew Bogut. Andre Iguodala was younger. Sean Livingston was younger. You look at the Warriors, and it was mostly their starting lineup. Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, and Boogie Cousins. Take away two of those guys, there's going to be more pressure on Steph Curry and Klay Thompson to be able to get it done. And even more so Draymond Green. Because people have been questioning how good Draymond Green is exactly. Hell, Houston should have closed out that game the other night after Durant went down. There is pressure on Golden State's big guys, like, Steph and Klay, but they're not nearly as much as the pressure on Houston, especially tonight at home. You have Mr. MVP award means everything to me in James Harden, who put together another regular season for the ages. And you got the highest paid player on the team in over $100 million veteran, Chris Paul. You got PJ Tucker, Eric Gordon, Clint Capella. Harden has been known as a guy who was unreal in the regular season, but isn't that same guy come playoff time? He can rewrite that narrative in the last two games of this series and in the finals. If he can be that guy down the stretch, hit those big shots, because he still hasn't proven it. I want to see him prove that. Become that guy. The same guy as you've been all regular season long. That guy. I want to see that guy against Golden State when it matters the most. This was a team who had Golden State down 3-2 before Chris Paul got hurt last year. And that was with Kevin Durant. The Rockets will never have a better chance to knock off this Warriors team than they do right now. This is it. They need to prove themselves. The pressure is on for Harden and Paul to deliver. I get it that they're down 3-2 and the Warriors have home court advantage, but I don't care. Big-time players, big-time moments. Steph, Klay, and Draymond have already proven to be champions. Multiple times, and once before Kevin Durant. They've already proven it. They know that these guys have been able to do it before. It's on Houston. It is on James Harden and Chris Paul, mostly. They can beat them with KD. Now you have to be able to finish them without him. No more excuses. The Blazers and Nuggets series is going 7 games. This has been the best, to me, still the best series in the NBA playoffs. Has been the Blazers-Nuggets series. Very evenly matched series. Portland defended their home court well last night. Dame Lillard once again showed why he's a great second-half player. I mean, he's a great player in general, but he is the kind of guy who's going to step up when palms get sweaty. Dame Lillard is that kind of dude. He and CJ McCollum both dropped 30+. Rodney Hood came up huge off the bench. Everybody's looking for, another scorer on the Blazers to step up. That's always been the question. Dame Lillard and CJ McCollum. Anyone else that can, drop 15 to 20 a night? Can they find another shooter? Another scorer? Rodney Hood could be that for them. Putting up 25 points, shooting 3 for 4 from beyond the arc. Very efficient night for Hood, who seems to have revitalized himself with this Blazers team. He's a big factor. He's very important for Portland moving forward. Oh, and by the way, I know I've brought him up before, but Zach Collins is becoming a very good NBA big. This kid is athletic. He can shoot. He can shoot the 3. He can pass. He can block shots. He blocked 5 shots last night. They finally gave him big minutes because of, Enes Kanter wasn't 100%. That's concerning, but Collins finally got those big minutes. He's not as big of a rebound guy as Enes Kanter, but to be honest, the minutes should be closer to even between those two. Collins put up 14 points, shot a 3, converted on all of his free throw attempts, and blocked 5 shots, including a couple dunk attempts. My issue remains, with him, his size. I don't think he's quite big enough. Obviously, he's tall, but I'm talking about like his size to be able to, hold his own against a guy like Jokic. Guys who are just big dudes. But if his lanky stature helps with his athleticism, so be it. I think my heart says to go with Damian Lillard and the Blazers to win this series. My head says that going against the Denver team that is probably the best home team in the NBA right now, and just a very good all-around team, deeper team, a really good defensive team with a guy like Jokic as the star, and Jamal Murray, who's coming into his own. My head says the Nuggets. My heart says the Blazers, and I'm going to go with my heart here. I think Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum find a way to take them home and move on. That'll about do it for me. I'd just like to say thanks to everyone for listening, all those in the chat room. I hope everybody has a great weekend. I'll be back on Monday, and stay good looking.